Hello everybody, welcome back to this class on cartooning and character design with the Essex Art Center. Again, my name is Justin. I'm excited to bring you our last lesson on color and shading. We're going to learn a little bit about continuing to add personality to our characters by thinking about the colors and the shapes that they have. So today, again, you're going to need lots of paper to draw on. Today you're going to see me drawing in pencil. I know I've been drawing just in pen for the last few lessons. Since we're adding color today, it helps to be able to draw in pencil and then erase later. So I have a pencil with an eraser. Get all kinds of colors. I'm using these really nice colored pens. If you have markers, colored pencils, crayons, that works as well. And I'm going to be using two different thicknesses of black pen today. I'm going to use a slightly thicker pen to do the outlines, and when we get into shading, adding some nice light and shadow to our characters, I'm going to use this slightly thinner black pen. So if you need to take a moment, pause, gather your supplies, and then when you're done, we can get started. So to begin talking about color and shading, it's best to start with some really simple characters, very simple designs, so you can just begin to learn the basics of shading. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw two very simple characters, maybe just a little round character. There's that guy. And then maybe a square character as well. So here's my two characters to start off with. I'm going to erase those pencil lines. So I just have the pen left over. There we go. Okay. Now to start adding color, you can just color these things in flat with a marker, color them in completely. What I like to do is I like to add some lines. I like to do something called cross-hatching, which sort of shows the direction that the color would move in, shows the shape of the character a little bit better. And so what you have to do is you have to take a look at your character, and we're going to start with a specific part, so we're just going to start with his kind of tummy area right here. And you have to think about the shape that this would be. Again, this guy's kind of a round character. He's a big kind of chubby little guy. So what we're going to do is we're going to use some very round curving lines to follow along the shape of what this character would be. So I'm going to start here. This would sort of come around the front. So I'm going to do little U shapes like that. And then it would curve over this way. So you can see how these curving lines follow the form of his big round body. I'm going to do the same for these little toes. I'm going to use little circles, starting with a little circle here, little U shapes going out of it. Same there. Then these would be big curvy lines right here. Really follow that form. Curve, 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 all the way down. Same for the head. So I'm going to do little short lines right here, just to kind of show he's got maybe one little flat side of his head right here. And I'm going to continue with those curvy lines across his face. Be flat lines at the edge again for his head. Color on the inside of his ears. Curvy lines on his ears like that. And we'll make his nose a different color. Why not? So there we go. That's how we do sort of a big round curvy character like that. For a character who's more flat like this guy, we'll make him orange. What we're going to do is use very straight flat lines like that. So big straight lines going down. We're going to follow the top of his head here with the lines for his face. I'm going to add a couple lines here for the bridge of his nose. Lines there as well. Lines going across his face. Lines going downward since his nostrils would kind of point down like that. Some vertical lines to make his eyebrows stick out a little bit. And then we'll just keep going down with those horizontal lines. And we're going to do the same for his lip that we did with those eyebrows. Add a little ridge there. This cheek would pop out a little bit too, so we'll add some lines going sideways as well. And there we go. And so since this guy's kind of a cube shape, he's got these sort of different sides or planes to his face. He's got the front plane, the side plane, the bottom plane. And for each plane, you want the main lines going in a different direction. So here the lines are going straight left and right. Here the lines are going at a little bit of a diagonal. For this bottom plane, we're just going to have them going straight up and down. And then we're going to color in his feet. So I'm going to add straight lines here for the edge. Big sideways lines here for the front of his foot. Up and down lines here for the bottom. Then we'll just color in those toes sideways. Same for this one. Then we'll just color in his ears. There we go. So this is how you use lines to follow the direction of the shape. And this way the color will sort of mimic the shape a little bit more and make your character look more three-dimensional. Now this takes a lot of practice. You just really have to sit and think about the three-dimensional shape of your character, what it would look like if it was made out of clay or an actual figure. So it takes a lot of practice. Don't worry if it's hard right off the bat. Just try different lines going in different directions. So that's how to do just color, and we are going to follow the exact same idea of directional lines for shading, so adding some shadow and shape to our character that way. And again, I'm just going to draw kind of a basic character. This guy will have a mixture of more organic and more angular elements. All right, there we go. There's the start of him. So I used my thicker Sharpie black marker to do the outline for this guy. Now I'm going to switch to that thinner pen that I have for the shading. This way it just helps us preserve the outline of the character so it doesn't get lost in the cross-hatching. So when we're shading the character, we're just going to be playing with the light and shadow on this character. And we're going to begin by thinking about where the light source would be. So let's say he's outside, say the sun is right here, and the sun would be pointing this way, sort of shining down on him like that. So all of the shadows, if the light is on this side of him, all the shadows are going to be on this side. So what we're going to do, we're just going to add shade, add cross-hatching with little tiny lines like this, just on one side of our character. So we're going to start here with his head. Again, I'm trying to use a mixture of more round and more square elements for this character. So I am just going to add some short little lines on his head to make it look more square. Like that. Put a little bit under here so he's got a little bit of a chin like that. A little for his neck right there. Now you need to think about the three-dimensional shape of your character. So if this was his head, his chin would stick out a little bit farther than his neck. So I just add a little bit more shadow under there. And now we're going to move down into his body. His body's this more curvy, round shape. So we're going to add some more curvy lines right there, kind of under his arm. Add a little bit of shadow there as well. Curvy lines, short curvy lines for his arm. Like that. Little shadows on his fingers like that. His leg is a little bit more square, so straight lines. Color in his ears, like that. A little bit of shading to his nose, a little bit to his cheek, a little bit under there. So you just have to think about all the places that would sort of catch the light and cast a shadow and draw those lines accordingly. I'm going to add a little bit of shadow right here just to suggest how his body kind of turns around that way. A little bit of shadow right here around his waist. A little bit more that way. And again, since the sun is shining down this way, sometimes it helps to draw your lines going in that same direction as the light would be casting the shadow that way. So that's sort of the basics of shading. And now what we can do is we can combine both of these things together, add color and shade. So we're just going to draw another simple little guy. We'll make him pretty big. So here's my little dinosaur man. And I'm going to begin by adding some color to this guy. So he's a little dinosaur guy. We'll do some fun different colors. We'll make him green right here. Again, thinking about the form, he'd have this big round body. So we're going to add, I'm going to add some little horizontal lines right here for his side. And then curvy lines for his front. And he's going to have this big round belly. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to switch colors. Give him a big yellow belly. So thinking about if you want him to be nice and fat, I'm going to add some circles here, kind of in the shape of that stomach. Then we're just going to blend that a little yellow into that green so it looks like it all kind of morphs together. Get a little bit of green going in here. Again, still thinking about the direction of this. Horizontal lines right here for his underside. There we go. Now for the tail, let's think the bottom of this tail is going to be yellow. And the bottom of the tail would be lying flat on the ground like that. So I'm going to do little flat lines going this way just to show a little bit of the bottom of that tail peeking out. Now I'm going to make the rest of this tail big and round, so I'm going to use round curving lines. Go from the tip of the tail, curve all the way up into the rest of the body, like that. Now let's say the bottom of his feet are yellow as well. So a little circle here for the tips of his toes. Big curvy shapes. There we go. Then little short shapes for the side of his foot. Little short lines, I mean, sorry. Add a couple curvy lines right here to show that just the bottoms of his feet are that yellow color. I'm going to do the same for his hands, just suggesting that the bottoms of his hands, the palms of his hands are that yellow. So just add short little lines on the edge of his wrist right here at the bottoms of his fingers. Just like that. Then for these arms, I'm going to use big curving U shapes. Now, since this is his arm, he's got his elbow, so his arm is going to go this way first for kind of his bicep. Then it's going to go this way for his forearm. So we're going to draw curves going in this direction. See, these are kind of going this way. Now, as this arm curves around, these lines are going to switch direction as well. Follow that curve up into his wrist. Now for his hand, draw some curving lines going down that way. A little bit for the tops of his hands right there. Same for this one, it's a little harder to see, but his arm's going to go this way, then this way. So little curves going this way as we can see them. Switch direction up into the hand. On the tops of his fingers like that. There we go. Now let's color in this guy's face. I'm going to give him a little pink nose. So circle for the tip of his nose, since it's a big, round, spherical shape. Curvy lines. Curves going in another direction for his nostrils, like that. We'll make the inside of his ears pink as well, so we'll just do little dashes like that. A little pink there for the bridge of his nose. Perfect. Now let's see. We're going to start thinking about the different shapes that will be on his face. So we've got his nose that we've colored in. He's got this little kind of chin here, so this would be a big round shape. So I'm just going to add some U's going up into his chin like that. He's got a big round cheek here. Draw those curvy shapes kind of under his eyes like that for his cheeks. Then we're just going to do some big flat shapes for the rest of his face like that. Maybe under his nose, it'll kind of curve into his mouth, so some curvy lines, more sideways lines like that. There we go. A little yellow for his ears. Perfect. Now we're going to color this in. So the front of his face is all yellow like that. The sides of his face will be green. This will be the part of his head that's kind of turning to the side. So we're just going to use some big flat lines for that. And they're just going to wrap all the way around underneath. Going to use a couple curving lines for the top right there. A little for the edge. Here we go. And now lastly we'll make these horns and these spikes that he's got on him pink to match with his nose and his ears. For that we're just going to do some kind of U-shaped lines. Again, these are going to kind of move in different directions because the horns kind of curve upwards like that. So these curves are going to follow that same direction. And then these are so small, we can just sort of color them in with horizontal lines. There we go. Just going to erase my pencil marks here. Now we've got some good color on this guy. We're just going to add a little bit of shade to him, little bits of shadow. When you're first starting off with this, with shading, less is really more. Try not to go too crazy, you know, adding black lines everywhere, because then you'll kind of lose your character in the midst of it. So we're just going to do small little lines right at the edges just to kind of continue emphasizing that shape. So we're going to think for this guy, the sun's going to be in this direction, so kind of shining down this way. So light would be sort of hitting all his front here, shadow would be just on this side. So I am just going to ever so lightly add some horizontal lines in here, and these can just go in the same direction as the lines of color that you have. A little bit right here, A little bit for his arm. Kind of catch that shadow under his forearm there. A little bit on his fingers. Again, just very, very little lines. We don't want to go too crazy. There would be a little shadow in here, right where his bicep kind of folds into his forearm. Just a little bit like that. A little bit of shadow here, kind of the shadow that his foot would be casting on his tummy. Same thing here. A little shadow for the bottoms of his feet. Bottoms and sides of his toes. And now the tail gets a little bit tricky since it would be behind him if the sun is going this way. His whole body would be casting a shadow on the tail. So these lines are really going to cover most of that tail. We'll leave a little bit to look like it's catching a little bit of light. Then kind of the big shadow of his belly, if he's got this big round tummy, it would stick out. The light would catch the front and the top of it. And the under part would be in shadow, so we'll get that. Little shadows under his arms. Little shadows on his feet. All right, and again, let's think about the three-dimensional shape. His head would be sticking out a little bit, so he would cast a little shadow on his neck like that. Little shadows on that edge. Little shadows on his horns. Very little on his ears. And really the whole inside of his ear would be in shadow, so you can add a couple lines there. Maybe a couple for his nose. For his chin like that. And there we go. Again, like I said, less is more. So if you get done and you think to yourself, well, I could add a little bit more, I could not, just don't. Just leave it like it is. So again, this takes a lot of practice just to get used to thinking about the shapes of your characters, the different directions the line would go in. So practice, practice, practice. Draw all kinds of fun characters with all kinds of fun shapes, round, square, circle, whatever you like, and add all kinds of color, all kinds of shadow. So thank you all so much for joining me for this class in cartooning and character design. I had a lot of fun teaching you guys. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope you'll be able to draw more characters in the future. Bye.